Global Forum for Excellence, which is organized by Hamdan bin Rashid Al Maktoum Foundation for Distinguished Academic Performance. The forum includes many sessions in the field of excellence and educational quality presented by speakers and specialists from all over the world. Our keynote speaker for today's session is Mr. Russell Longmire, CEO of FQM. He will talk about FQM Hamdan education model and its role in improving education quality in the educational institutions. Before we start, I would like to mention that at the end of the speech, we will have a question and answer session. So please, everyone, drop your questions in the Q&A box. You will find it below the screen, and we will do our best to answer all of your questions. Allow me to introduce our keynote speaker. Mr. Russell Longmire is CEO of FQM and previously CEO of the British Quality Foundation. He has lived and worked in the US, Europe, and Asia as a partner at KPMG, IBM, and PwC. The common theme throughout his career has been leading large-scale change and transformation for organizations. Russell has worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, advising them on how to manage change, whether it be initiated by technology, regulatory pressures, or market disruption. Prior to his consistent career, Russell worked in investment banking in London and New York. Russell is leading the transformation at FQM, introducing a technology platform, the new FQM model, digitizing training, opening an office in the UK, and re-energizing growth in the Middle East and China. He is a qualified organizational consultant and executive coach. FQM's biggest relationships are personally managed by Mr. Russell, such as EU, DEWA, BMW, Bosch and Siemens, and many more. Everyone, let's welcome Mr. Russell Longmire.
Thank you, Marwa. Nice to see you again, and it's great to be here in Dubai today. I was a bit surprised when I got off the plane yesterday, and it was actually quite cool. So, but it's a lovely day today, and I'm really pleased that I could come and tell you a little bit about EFQM, but mostly about our work with the Hamdan Foundation. I'm going to do the standard thing and ask you whether you can see my screen. I'm going to quickly share. It's been a relationship that we've had for nearly 4 years with Hamdan Foundation, and our whole goal was to try and help schools, teachers, parents, and stakeholders in education improve how they deliver education to children throughout the world. In the first place, we wanted to start was here in Dubai and then wider the UAE, but it is a global model. And I want to thank Hamdan Foundation for all their work and contribution to putting this together over the last few years. I will just stretch my screen onto screenshots. There we can. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to, as I said, share a little bit about EFQM for those that don't know. Some of you may already know us. I'm going to highlight a little bit about the EFQM Hamdan education model, but I'm not going to go into detail. Obviously, this seminar is being recorded and you can have access to the slides as well. And you'll find a lot of the detail is actually quite difficult to see on screen. So I won't go into that detail, but I'll just bring out some broad brush strokes of the model and some of the results we've got. I will also, as I say, talk about a little bit of the feedback from the model. A number of schools have used the model to review themselves in terms of, there's a very simple questionnaire that's free to use for everybody, all the way through to doing a deep analysis. And then I'm going to say, if there's anything that's interesting for you on the phone and the call today, the next steps that you can do. We did create not just the model, but we've created an award for schools. But I'm not going to go into the detail of if you wanted to apply. For that, you should contact us at EFQM here in Dubai or Marwa at the Hamdan Foundation. So let me just give you a bit of history before I go on to actually what we do. The EFQM started 30 years ago, and it was the idea of 15 global companies who were based in Europe. So BMW, Bosch, British Telecom, Fiat from Italy, and a number of others. And they wanted an organization that wasn't owned or controlled by them to effectively provide intellectual property methods and sharing across different organizations that will allow European organizations in the first instance to improve. And we signed a cooperation agreement with the EU, and that the EU would be our advocate, but that's as far as our relationship goes. With the EU, we've always had a close relationship with us, but we don't get any support from them directly. What we do get support from is large organizations and small organizations around the world who buy our services and also join us as members. Now, the whole principle of the EFQM was to help companies improve themselves. So we did that with these three things. First of all, rather than rely on consultants, we trained people within a company and with the skills and methods that they could improve that organization themselves. So it wasn't about having teams of consultants in doing it to them. It was very much around, if we trained one or two advocates within a company, they would spread the word and help companies build the methods and approaches to improve themselves. And we still do that today. And we train thousands of people, both face-to-face and online, and through our partners. And we do that in about 35 languages. We also do it online through the Future Learn platform, which is a global learning platform. And you can do EFQM courses on there for free, or spend a small amount of money and get a certificate for doing the course. We still do that training, and a lot of the work that we do is around building training programs for organizations, but also set training courses. The second thing we do is we give organizations insight about themselves. So we help them understand how well they are performing. Now, obviously, when we all look at ourselves and we look at our organization, we can be a bit biased, but we have a global index, a global benchmarking scale that allows any company, whether it's a school, whether it's a charity, or whether it's DIWA, to actually score themselves, and the scoring can be equivalent. So if you're 400 points, you know that you can improve yourself, but there may be other organizations in a completely different size or market or country that you can learn from. The other aspects of those assessments is that we effectively give you a real change implementation or opportunities for change implementation. So we tell you what outstanding organizations look like, or in our case today, outstanding schools might look like and what they do well, and how you could somehow implement those changes in your organization. And the last thing we do is we recognize people who have attained certain levels. And so we have a third-party assessment process, which is we bring in assessors to organizations. They assess over both online and face-to-face, and they provide certification from the EFQM to those organizations. And we start right at the basic end with small organizations with a very simple, maybe 1 or 2 day process, all the way up to, as I say, someone like DIWA, where we might have 1,000 pages of information and data, and we assess the company. But at the end of the day, we provide a feedback report with opportunities for improvement and certification. And that's the three things we still do today. We train people to help organizations improve. We give them insight into where they perform, and then we recognize them and certify them and celebrate them when they do well. We work with all sorts of organizations around the world, and I've just given some names here of organizations that you may have heard of, right the way from Bosch to Saudi Aramco, and you'll see some other names here. Signify is Philips Lighting, and light bulbs, etc. Infineon, Huawei, and you'll see schools, Bradstow School in the UK, University of Winchester, Elisa, which is a technology company in Finland, and obviously people like various organizations from the UAE. We have DIWA, Abu Dhabi Police, and various others. So it's really a breadth, and the whole point is our model fixes any organization. We've always had a really deep history around working with education establishments. A lot of universities, a lot of colleges. In fact, our chairman is actually the CEO of the City of Glasgow College, which is the UK's biggest tertiary educator. It's gone through an amazing transformation and really aligned to world skills. And you'll see Bradstow School there, a previous EFQM Global Award winner. That is a state funded school in the UK for special needs children. But you'll see all over the world that we have had a very strong background in education. We've actually got a board member, Nieves Segovia in Spain, who is the founder and CEO, well, she's not the founder, sorry, her father founded the company, but she's the owner and CEO of SEK International. And she has an international school in Qatar, that they've had that for about 5 or 6 years. And last year, they opened the first co-ed school in Saudi Arabia. As you see here, the Saudi Minister of Investment, it was a really, really big deal. Two international schools were opened. And the interesting thing about these schools is that that SEK International School in Riyadh is actually predominantly for Saudi children. It is not necessarily there for expatriates, which is a lot of international schools are. But what I wanted to just say is that for 30 years, we've been working with education, and we have a lot of education expertise, both at school level and at college level in our board. And as I say, we operate in many countries around the world. And one of the biggest areas where we do a lot in education is in South America, where over 1,000 schools over the last 20 years have been assessed and certified and recognized by EFQM. And here you'll see a great article on Gabriela Rivaro, who works in Peru and Ecuador, and our friends in Colombia. And this is really trying to increase the standard of education in those 3 countries specifically. And they really, really have done an amazing job. And you'll see the Colombian there, 600 organizations, and I think about 80% of those are in education over the last 12 years. Hopefully you know a lot about our good friends at the Hamdan Foundation, who are there to build an educational system and support education to really drive distinguished academic performance. And the interesting thing for us was the ability to have our traditions and experience in education and to combine it with the Hamdan Foundation's experience in education and come up with something that was world leading, that all schools, all students, parents and stakeholders could use. And that was where our journey started 4 years ago. How can we create the world's best model for outstanding education? So we joined forces and we came up with the idea of building a model. Now, EFQM has built improvement models for the last 30 years. And as we were doing this, at the same time, we were releasing the new version of the EFQM model. So what we effectively did was we brought the best of the EFQM model that was just being designed, and that was following about 2,000 interviews and 2,000 people interviewed and surveyed for their input as to what makes outstanding organizations. We interviewed 100 C-level executives, and at the same time, we did that in the education world. We gathered global education experts together, and we wanted to challenge the findings of the EFQM model for organizational improvement, and make sure that it was actually that was fit for purpose in education. The essence of the EFQM model are 3 premises. Why do you exist as an organization? Ask a school. Why does this school exist? how does it work? How does it execute? How does it implement curriculum? How does it manage its pupils? How does it manage its staff teams? How does it manage its inspection frameworks? How does it deal with change? How do they manage their stakeholders, their parents, educational authorities, etc.? And what results does this school or this organization want? So these three things: why does it exist? How does it work? And what are the expectations? And we tested the education model with schools around the world and with various educational experts to really give us the best model, but based on those three pillars from the EFQM model. And this is what we came up with. At the absolute center is the school. And as I say, we want to really know the direction the school is pulling in. So what is its purpose? What is its vision? What is its strategy? What is the culture? And what does the leadership look like? How does it actually teach? So the execution. So how does it engage its stakeholders? How does it create value for all students and its stakeholders and its people, its teachers? And how does it drive performance? How does the school improve itself? How does it improve the lives of its pupils? How does it transform as the world transforms or as educational authorities or countries change? And lastly, what are the results it's expecting? So what are the perceptions of people, but also what are the actual operational performance? Now, this is a lot more detailed and I won't go through it, but it does give all the absolutely next level of detail that we're asking schools to actually look at. So if we take organizational and culture and leadership at the top corner, the first thing we would be saying is, does the school's culture, does it exist? Is it seen in all pupils and teachers? Does it nurture their values? Does it create the conditions for realizing change? Does it enable creativity and innovation? And does it unite everyone behind its purpose, vision, and strategy? And these are the sorts of questions we ask schools. Now, there's a lot of detail here, but there's a very simple way to start, which is just those 7 questions, which is, what's your purpose? What's your organizational culture like? How do you engage your students and teachers and parents? So you can make the model very, very simple, and it's on a technology platform, and that first level of questions is available free for everybody to use at any time. As part of the model, I think we really wanted to drive recognition. So we wanted to ask schools to assess them, get themselves assessed, build implementation, and then for us to recognize how well they are doing. And we're starting that process at the moment of building an education award. And the real reason to do that was to recognize great, outstanding schools, to have both a simple but also a challenging assessment process. We wanted the feedback reports to be improvement-based rather than you've done this wrong or this is the area where you're not performing, but very much around, have you looked at this opportunity? And the way that EFQM provides feedback is always around, this is what other schools or other organizations do, and this is how they do it. So we don't just leave you with a blank, you must improve. We say, this is how other organizations are scoring highly. And what we wanted was the ability for a number of schools to come together in a rigorous assessment process to gain their own feedback, but also keep improving. So talk amongst themselves. They actually learn and they will have the same language, the same language of improvement. And hopefully that improves the standard of all schools. Because even if you take your schools in the lower quartile, if they can work together, talking to those in the quartile above them, hopefully they will improve. Awards really, I think they demonstrate how well schools are performing. You could be in a very challenging area with very challenging circumstances, but you can still celebrate the successes you make. and showcasing the reputation and the ability of a school to improve is really, really important and part of the benefit of the education award. But also motivating people, motivating children, and motivating the stakeholders and the parents to really get behind the school. So what I wanted to move on to is the fact that a number of schools around the world have actually taken the first step, which is they've taken our questionnaire, which is about 25 questions around the model you've seen, and they've effectively assessed themselves, sometimes with the help of assessors, sometimes with the help of maybe working with their management team internally, and they've come up with some results. Now, you're going to have to forgive me, but the writing along the bottom is actually what I was talking about before, those criteria element of what we're talking about. But the most important thing, and you can have these slides and you can see, the first thing you'll notice is that the scores are very much, and they're all out of 100, we're very much in the 50s out of 100. So just in terms of schools, there's a long way of improving. Now, just to give you an example, some of the best schools in the world and the best organizations in the world would be averaging around 70 to 75 in each element of the model. So there's a big improvement to go. So if we took it that, you know, the top 1% of schools are in 75 across everything, these schools are between 50 and 55. So there's almost a 50% improvement ready to go. And it's really for them to say, okay, I understand where to go, but how would I go about it? I've just given 3 comments here, really, which is what schools are really good at is having a really clear purpose and inspiring everybody within their ecosystem, which is very much around, finding out what their ecosystem is, finding out what the perception of those people are, and also delivering their purpose to them. Where you see at the moment is that schools are probably struggling is understanding the mega trends that are going on within a country, within a region, within it globally, but also the UN Sustainable Development Goals is probably understandable. But the interesting thing is that a lot of schools are restricted by education authorities or investment to enable them to really look forward with and look at their ecosystem to plan in advance, and that's the weakest area. And one of the lowest areas, and you'll be interested to know, is that this is the lowest area of all organizations in the world, is finding out what their stakeholders believe about them or think about them. So really their perception. So rather than saying, these are the results that my school delivers, actually saying, well, what are the perceived views about you from those outside? And it's an area that a lot of organizations struggle with. Just doing surveys about what people think about isn't really leading edge. And it's really getting beyond what are the perceptions of people and what the results of those are. I wanted to give you sort of a number of assessors' feedback and from around the world on various assessments we've done, both from previously before the model from the EFQM assessments, from those countries that still use just the model, and those schools that have been using external assessors. And I think this is really interesting. And this is talking about, this is really understanding your ecosystem. So within the school, what is your ecosystem? It's not just, it's the homes that your pupils live in, it's the regions, it's the local government, it's the geography that you're in, it's your teachers, it's where the teachers are trained, it's the colleges, it's everything. So the ecosystem. And it's really understanding that ecosystem a lot better. It's not just understanding your parents, your pupils, your teachers. It's really understanding what is your ecosystem as a school and how can you influence it and how can you operate better within it. The second, I guess, piece of feedback is, and I think we all understand this as educators and pupils, is that it's not just the foundational literacies that are really important in today's world. And I think we've seen that more so in the last 2 years, where we as that as adults who are working, we want more creativity, problem solving, adaptability from ourselves. But this is really what we need from the children of tomorrow, or the adults of tomorrow, the children of today. This is, you know, a much more adaptable, creative, problem solving group of young people who show leadership, social and cultural awareness, and really are able to collaborate. And this was another piece of feedback. And these last 2 points, it just sort of doesn't take too much brains to realize that the top performing school systems really attract the best people, and they have therefore deliver better student outcomes. And I think, and then the bottom point is really saying more, which is, you know, this more adaptive, flexible growth mindset, both from teachers, from the leaders within the school, both from parents and pupils, will deliver better educational outcomes. But I guess, I mean, I'm just telling you, these are probably truisms that we all know. How we get there is our challenge, and these are the challenges. This is what outstanding schools are, and for a lot of schools, it's how do I actually do that? And one of the purposes that we serve is to get lots of organisations together and share that. So what do other organisations, and it might be charities, it might be small startups, it might be small public sector organisations. So how do they breed creativity and innovation, and what can schools learn to pass on to their pupils? So it really is a sharing basis, and that's really, as I say, the DNA of EFQM. Let's share really what works well. And as I said, everyone can get started. Our questionnaire is on our assess base, and we'll make sure that Marwa sends that out with any recording from there on. But there's an address, but you can find that on our website as well, on efqm.org. It'll be on there. And it's open to everybody. We just need an email address, and there are around 25 questions, and you can score yourself and then ask for the data, which will compare you with maybe 100 or so organizations. But do this in a group and really challenge yourselves to really understand where you are as an educational establishment. But it's a great starting point, it's a great talking point, and it's great for leadership teams to come together, but also your older pupils to ask them some of the questions about the school as well. So in terms of how you, the real advantage to being assessed by a team of assessor is that you will receive, quite a lengthy feedback report, areas where you excel, areas where you can improve, detailed strengths, opportunities for improvement. And as I say, we also get a scoring analysis of other scores, not just schools, but other organizations. So where we stand at the moment, and working with the Hamdan Foundation and Marwa and Dr. Khalifa and the team there, we've trained 30 assessor education experts in how to use the model, both right from that simple end, right through to in more detail. There is a much more detailed webinar that's just been recorded, and I think Marwa is going to release that in the next couple of weeks. So there's a real detailed, if you want to actually either become fully assessed or join the award process. And as I say, the questionnaire is free and you can start your journey just by doing that. And a full copy of the model is available to buy from EFQM's website. So really, that's what I wanted to say, and hopefully there'll be some questions. But this has been a really interesting journey, like all of us, interrupted by the pandemic, and that's been very challenging for schools, especially those schools that have found it very, very difficult with absent teachers, lockdowns, and real inability to put the resources behind what I guess what we're all here today is, which is educating the students. So I want to thank you for your time, and obviously happy to take questions, and I'll hand back to Marwa.
Thank you, Mr. Ratzel, for the amazing session, and thank you all for joining us. Let's see, I mean, we can start the question and answer session. We don't have that much questions, but if you want to interact with us live, you can just raise your hand. Someone is asking about the presentation, if it's possible to share with them. Of course, I mean, we can share it with them. So just make sure that you are registered with your email that you're using, and we will send it to you. Okay, and we have, can you share the assessment form? I think Mr. Russell already mentioned that there is a free questionnaire, which is likely as a, I'm not sure, I mean, if you can detail it more, Mr. Russell, about the assessment form that is available for free.
It's on our technology platform. We have the EFQM model on there, but we also have the various other what we call lenses. So the education model is on there. Let me just copy it to everybody, and I will just, there we go. So hopefully everyone can see that. You just go onto that assess-based digital EFQM. There are various questions there that you can take for all organizations. Just enter in. There are around about 25 questions with a slider, and it gives you a rough idea of what your score might be at the end of it. We always recommend you do that with potentially someone who understands the model. So there were, as I say, there are 30 assessors, but we at EFQM can help you. And doing it as a team, a leadership team within a school, is really, really helpful. But it really just gets to the detail of your school and how it works and what people understand. And as I said, asks you and challenges you on those three pillars, which is, why do you exist? And does everybody understand that within your ecosystem? How do you deliver great outcomes for students, and what are the other objectives and results that you want from the school?
So the link is shared in the chat, everyone, so you can use the questionnaire and assess yourself, your school, I mean. Okay, do you provide training for assessor and recruit additional assessors?
We're always interested in new assessors. At the moment, we've got 30. What we're trying to do is recruit more schools so those assessors can get more practice at assessing schools. But as I say, we're always looking forward to training more people. There will be various training courses advertised from time to time. There is a program, but I think what we're trying to do this year is get the cycle of assessment for schools to be started with the current assessors, and then develop further assessors afterwards. And that's really for every single country. And different languages. As we know, most schools, not all, but some international schools are a bit different, but they do prefer to manage and deal in their local language, wherever that might be. So we're always looking for education assessors with different languages. We have lots of Spanish speakers, and Arabic is obviously the key language here. There are some international schools that prefer English. But as I say, we're always looking for new assessors.
So there's many questions on how to become an assessor. So many people are interested. There's a question, what is the criteria for becoming an assessor? I mean, along of course, passing the training, but I mean, if there is any criteria to be enrolled. I
mean, what generally is that we have a lot of EFQM assessors. And they're very, very experienced, and so training them in the EFQM model is the first step. For that was one step. Then there are people who understand the educational world and have worked with lots of different schools, and then it's a matter of training them. What we're trying to do is get schools to be part of the process. So if you have a connection with a school, the interesting thing is probably get your school involved, go through the process yourself, you'll understand how the process works, and then go on the training afterwards to then be able to do it to other schools.
Okay. So someone is asking if there is any like training for the assessor in the future.
Yes,
I think we do.
same question, same answer.
Yes, so we do. Hopefully, we will be announcing it, and if it's open for public, I mean, there is of course a criteria for that. So you have to apply. I mean, I think they have to apply.
Yes, there is. I mean, at the moment we've got lots of assessors, and
Yes.
as I say, the best way of doing it is if you have any connection with a school. So you've taught there, you've managed there, you used to attend, you have children there. If you can encourage a school to go through the assessment process, then it's very, very valuable for you to go through that process and then do the training thereafter.
There's a question, what is the difference between EFQM and Pisa? Pisa, I think P-I-S-A.
Huh? Oh, okay. So there we go. I've got my expert sitting next to me. So one assesses the organization and one assesses the student. So we assess the school.
How can an association of parents of gifted children participate in your project? I'm not sure if
it's yes. I mean, encourage the educational establishment that their children are in to go through the assessment. So if that association was interested, we could do a presentation to them, and if those students were all at different schools, is really for them to be advocates and go back to their school and say, you know, is the school really adapting for all of its students? And one of them will be the highly gifted.
Okay. Someone is asking if there is, you know, training about the model, how to use the model in the future, and how can they know?
Yeah, so my colleague here who runs the EFQM office here in Dubai, Isra, has recorded a how-to and how the award works, how the assessments work, the feedback, how to apply for the award. But if you're very, very keen, then you can drop me a line or drop Maro a line, and we will manage that, no problem at all. We'll get you started straight away.
Sure, and also they can follow us on our social media platforms, the website. You can, you know, have a heads up of the future activities, whether it's training, assessment, and all of that.
Yeah, I think the number one principle is any connection you have with the school is to try and get that school to go through the assessment, and that might literally just be the questionnaire with an assessor, just so the school can start reflecting on itself. And if everybody on this call was able to do that, then effectively all of those schools will start the improvement journey, and they'll be able to start talking the same language, and we will improve education across all schools and all institutions for all students.
So there's a question, could you give us a real example of a school improvement by using FQM model?
I think the school I mentioned earlier was Bradstow School in the UK, and they've been using the EFQM model for many years. I think for Bradstow is they were a state school, so they weren't private, and they were actually funded. Interestingly, they were funded outside of their area. So the local education authority set up a school in a different area. They basically went through the model, and the first thing they did was, I think the first time they did it, they scored around 350 points, and they set themselves on a 5-year journey to get over 500 points. So every year they would identify improvements, areas of improvement, and a lot for them was about really understanding the needs of their students outside just education. So was it a connection with parents? Was it connection with locality? Was it more help? And identifying a whole improvement plan around that.
Another question is this process only applicable for schools or other establishments as well?
The model is, well, the EFQM has a model that's available for all organizations. And as I say, we do everything from the UN down to D-Word, down to very small charities. But you can use exactly the same principles with this model for universities or colleges or any other educational establishment as well. So it doesn't really matter what the organization is. The principle is exactly the same. And if you go onto our website, you'll see the model, the model, generic model for outside. And if you go onto that questionnaire, the question on another part of the questionnaire on the assess space is actually the generic model as well.
How does FQM compare with other internationally organized QMs, which is quality management?
Well, we're not really an organization that is in the quality world. I know we have the Q in our title, but we're not really, we don't really align ourselves to ISO. So we're not looking at process or product quality. What we're doing is we're looking at performance improvement of an organization. There are many organizations like us that tend to be less international. And obviously in Dubai, there's the Dubai Excellence Program for a lot of the government-owned organizations. But there are organizations around the world. But I guess EFQM is the most international. As I said, we operate in about 40 countries, 35 languages. Where we put our training on the Future Learn platform, we had, within 3 months, we had 2,500 people trained from 105 countries. So I guess from all the models around the world about organizational improvement, we're probably the most international. But there are other organizations that are very, very dominant. In the US, there's the Baldrige. In Japan, they have their own system. In Malaysia, they have their own excellence. But I guess the advantage we have is that we can compare schools in Colombia with schools in Spain, with schools in the UK, with schools in Saudi and the UAE. So, we have that global reach.
Can we conduct a research along with our school using this model? If yes, can we get support from your side?
Yes, you can. The best thing is to contact us and we'll understand what your research needs are. But certainly, I think if you look at the questionnaire, see how that fits. But what you will get is some data out of doing the process. And I think, yes, just contact us and we'll certainly be able to help you.
Okay. How to help and ensure the school to carry out the changes they need?
That's a very good question. That's a very, very good question because assessment is the first step in the journey. And then, as we all know, it's how you act on that change. And I think the first thing is that there are lots of other schools and lots of other organizations who use our model. And we have lots of sessions where we put those people together. So without even actually doing anything, you can learn from all sorts of other organizations and schools straight away. So that's the first point. The second point is, EFQM can certainly help out. We have a lot of experience in terms of how to implement a lot of the change and what works well and what doesn't work well. But there are other consultants out there that can help. But it's a really good question because at the first hurdle, the assessment is the first challenge. The second one is actually then prioritizing which changes you want to make. And then the third one is actually implementation, probably the most difficult.
Someone is asking about the financial side of it. How does it work? Is the model has to be reapplied on yearly basis?
If you get the model you can use all the time, every day without any cost at all, because obviously once you've got the questionnaire or you buy a brochure, which is around about €60, you can use it yourself. If you want a formal assessment, that actually costs some money. If you want to go into the award, there is a different scale, and it depends on where the school is. And certainly there's a lot of support from EFQM and the Hamdan Foundation to help schools start that journey. But in terms of the, if you are certified by EFQM, that certification will last 3 years. So if you get a formal assessment, it lasts for 3 years.
The validity of the certificate, I think.
3 years, yes. But not everybody has to do the certification. You can just start the journey, start your improvements and aim to do certification next year, or start the journey this year and go into the EFQM Hamdan Award next year.
Do the results of this assessment benefit with KHDA evaluation or any relationship between them? The KHDA is...
I'm talking to my expert who used to work for KHDA, so... Yes, I mean, basically, I think at the end of the day, if you do, it's another piece of evidence. It's like any assessment framework. If you can... I think what it does, it allows you to actually, I mean, they are another stakeholder. They are part of your ecosystem. And so actually what you're doing is you're sitting there going, who are the different parties that I have to deal with, manage, deliver results to? And I think the model is really, really outstanding at doing that. And that's why the biggest companies in the world use it as well.
Another question is, how long is the assessment cycle and how impactful are the benefits for the organization?
Well, how impactful depends on what you do with the opportunities for improvement. It's really how quickly you implement them. What we're finding now is that for a school to go through a formal assessment, we can get the school through as quick as they would like. So in the, I guess, the traditional model was we used to train a couple of people and we used to leave the school to go and do their work over a year or 2 years. We can now get the school up to speed with data and an assessment as quick as they like. So the answer to that can be, the cycle can be as short or as long as people want it to be.
I think this is the last question. Is it possible to take us through a sample submission for FQM assessment?
In terms of the education, I think the webinar, the recording webinar will help in terms of the actual process. So it'll take you step by step through the application, how the assessment works, how you'll be assessed. Then in terms of the EFQM Hamdan Award, how the jury will work, and then how the awards are given. So that's probably the best thing. If you wanted a non-EFQM Hamdan Award process, so just an assessment via the model, then I would guess you should contact us directly and we can take you through the steps that are required. For everybody, I would say go through the questionnaire first, because it's still quite detailed in some of the evidence that they ask for. So I would start there and see how well you're performing, and then contact us here in our office in Dubai.
I believe we have answered all the questions we have till now. So regarding the webinar, I would like to add that hopefully we will be finishing it by the end of this month. So maybe next month it will be available for everyone. You can find it through our website, through our social media platforms, YouTube, for Hamdan Foundation and EFQM for sure. And I think this is the end of our session today. Thank you, Mr. Russell, for the amazing session. And before I end, I would like just to inform you all that you will find the survey of this session in the chat. And also it will be shared through the email, the registered email in Zoom. So please make sure to complete the survey in order to receive your certificate. Again, thank you, Mr. Russell, and thank you to all who joined us today. See you all in the next session and have a nice evening. Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.